Welcome to Eden Equips, the podcast that shares real stories, practical tools to help parents, carers, educators feel equipped on the journey of raising and supporting neurodivergent children and young people. Whether you're tuning in today in the car, that you've got a little quiet moment, you're on your way to work, you're sitting down with a cup of coffee, whatever you're doing, I'm really glad you are here. And today we're joined by the incredible Julia. Julia and I met pretty early on my Eden consultancy journey and career, where we were speaking at an event, and Julia shares her story. Many of you will have heard it before, and shares it so bravely and openly, and has made it her mission to advocate for autistic individuals around mental health. Julia's story is one of heartbreak, and yet she is determined to then make a difference for all autistic individuals, and it's really beautiful. And just a little trigger warning over this episode, there is going to be conversation around mental health and around suicide. Julia, I'm so happy to have you here today. It's so nice to see you. Julia and I, honestly, it has been quite a few years, hasn't it? And I 4 years, because I think it was really early on in kind of Eden consultancy days. I felt like a wee baby nearly meeting you on that journey, and we have journeyed a lot together. I'm so excited for you to be here and share your story on this platform today. I guess always a really good place to start in a podcast, because I do these introductions, but I always like to hand it over then to you in terms of, Julia, who are you and what do you do? You know, given your introduction.
Who am I? Obviously, I'm Julia McKeever.
Yeah.
I'm a suicide advocate.
Yes.
And I mainly focus on the autistic community, working to raise awareness, improve understanding of mental health and suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
To ensure that autistic voices are heard.
Right.
I'm also chairperson of Family Voices Forum, where I support families that have been bereaved by suicide and helping them to shape services within Northern Ireland and change policies.
Just casual, really, just, small wee things. Those are huge things to be involved in, Julia. And like many things that I think a lot of people would be quite nervous to be involved in or have conversations around, when we're talking about advocating around suicide preventions and especially for autistic individuals. You have a really deep passion for protecting and loving the autistic community through this, especially we're talking about suicidal ideation and stuff like that. I guess where has that passion come from?
It's obviously come from the love of my son.
Yeah.
So Luke, yes, he passed away February 2021.
Yeah.
And he was diagnosed with Asperger's at the time. And so my passion comes from obviously loving someone that is autistic, seeing how amazing he was as an autistic child and an adult, living that journey as an autistic mum. So my passion comes from wanting other families not to obviously have their journey end where mine did, which was suicide. So my passion is I think what keeps me going in that journey is wanting life to be different where Luke's wasn't, making sure that autistic people are heard and listened to, and to see the joy in having a child that's autistic.
And Julia, I think, again, anyone who's heard your story before or listened to you speak, and, I think always that the thing, even when I first heard you speak and first heard you share your story, I think the biggest thing that stand out, and even in that sentence that you've just said, is that your passion that you want other people's stories to end differently, that you're taking that grief and trauma and wanting to help others with it. And I think that's that's incredible, that being able to kind of step forward and do that, and for Luke as well, isn't it, ultimately? And I guess there's so many different parts in that. How are you doing that? So you talked about being Family Voices, things like that. What does looking like advocating for autism mental health, what does that look like currently for you, for what you're doing?
Obviously, it's for me. I'm part of the all-party group within Northern Ireland for Suicide Prevention. Obviously, with Family Voices Forum, we get the chance to go to conferences, to attend events, or to attend social groups. And it's really putting forward my story as a bereaved mum, and obviously given the autistic side. So I find that's important, for me, because I get to meet so many people, and it's given them, the understanding of, suicide and autism and mental health together.
Yes, that like overlay of things, because necessarily when we're maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we're talking about like, if you're looking at suicide prevention and those services, if neurodivergent brains aren't considered in that can get really lost because of different approaches to things as well.
Yeah, a lot of people with suicide prevention, it's suicide on a whole. So that can be drugs and alcohol and different things. But I find that autism was overlooked, and with so many people dying by autism and the statistics being 9 times more likely.
That's by suicide for autistic individuals. Yeah,
so it's a big thing for not to have been taken on board, so for it not to be in policies or anything within, it was just beyond me. So it was more, okay, who can I go to see, who can I meet?
And you're known now, Julia, like we were even talking about that, of like within those meetings and in up at Stormont and all those party and all party groups, it's always very much like to a place now that you fought to have your voice heard, that people are like, yeah, Julia, we're going to talk about that, how important that's so important though, isn't it? To make sure that
it is. And it's for them to understand that, I'm a normal mum, that's fighting for a cause that, is needed. So Dr. Sean, or Dr. Siobhan O'Neill, she's our mental health champion. She has such a passion now for autism and within that, and it's because she's got to know me as well, and no matter where we are, she'll go out of her way to come over and sort of say,
And isn't that important though? Like, I think the stories behind the statistics, people behind statistics. Like, I've always struggled with statistics a little bit when you're like, just, when you see these statistics turned out, and they're important because they're for research, and I absolutely have been involved in some of that stuff, but they're human beings in those stories. And I'm actually, I can read a number and be like, right, whatever. But when I meet those people, that's when it all changes, because exactly as you said, now I'm hearing a story.
Yeah.
Now I'm seeing a photo of Luke and I'm like, oh, a person, a human being, and that's where it becomes real, rather than we're removing this, oh, it's this number and blah, blah, blah. Because, in all party meetings, it's very easy just to read out those statistics, but not feel you have to do much about it because you don't see the people. No. So what you've done is fill that gap of be like, hey, I'm a human, this is my story, and this is the story of many other people too. So how can we change that as well?
100%. That's one of the things that I said at the all party group the other day, because we did a minute silence,
right?
And I had said, look, we have to remember that in the 290 people that died, they are family members, their sons, their daughters, their
What was that
friends.
Statistic from 290?
It was 290 people died in 2024 of suicide suicide.
Yeah, and that, as you said, that's. Yeah, that's a big number too. It's not just a number, but it's a big
number when you're thinking in 2021, when Luke passed away, there was 237.
Wow.
So there's a lot more. So it's not, we know that it can be preventable. Okay. It's not always preventable.
Yeah.
But it's good to.
And I think then even let's jump into that kind of practical conversations around that. What are some of your top tips around supporting an autistic individual in their mental health journey?
Listening.
Okay.
I think it's really listening to what they want, understanding that they're not going to be able to use the language that we do. So I think it's very important to understand that and give them time. Sometimes it's asking the questions, knowing that they can't answer it straight away, but coming back again and answering those same questions when maybe they've had time to work out their answers in their head. The biggest thing for me, it's just listening. I find that even though I did listen to Luke, I didn't always understand, and he didn't have the language to relay that to me. So for me, that would be, the most important, and get patience, to have time to think and to understand that person and what they're trying to say.
Yeah. So giving time, I think, is a big thing, isn't it? Of knowing that the approach might have to be a wee bit different, have conversations in a different way, and just be open to that. Be open to step into communicating in different ways. recognise, and I guess then that's what you're fighting and advocating for, that systems and services are aware of that. Yeah. How are you finding that? Do you find there's much understanding, or there's still
I think
real
there's a big
barriers?
lack of understanding for autism,
yeah,
and where that comes, and it's understanding even ADHD and all the other conditions that go with it, and knowing that even though you might have one, you know, you
overlaps,
and it's understanding that people are very much still in the, well, especially with what's coming up in the news now at the moment, which has been a nightmare, whether it is coming from, you know, whether
people get caught up in a lot of things, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting is that, like, I think sometimes I forget, because the world that I am in is very much surrounded by individuals like yourself and advocates and professionals who are really pushing and supporting and have really high level of knowledge. But it's the general population or community, it's services, which then, like in mental health services, so that when they're supporting an individual, they might just remain really open and curious about, like, potentially I need to approach this a little bit differently. Would you find, though, that, like, services could be changed up in a way that actually that approach is going to be really useful to all? Because what you said is listening, what you said is giving processing time. That's helpful for everybody, isn't it? Surely.
Yeah, I think it's understanding good mental health and bad mental health and depression and what they are.
Right.
And understanding that autistic people are so different. We think so differently, you know, and it's getting people that are, I suppose, doctors, consultants, psychologists, to understand this part of the brain and how it works, and to understand that, which they don't get training in it.
Right. Completely. You know, and I think that is the ultimate thing, isn't it? Of, like, actually, when we're like, oh, doctors and consultants and this, but actually it's there isn't the support even there for them of being trained up in. And I know that was something you're very passionate about, making sure that there is this level of, in our community, for everybody, like, no matter who we're meeting, that there's some understanding of neurodivergence. So when they do see very harmful statements in the news, they're not jumping onto that and being like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Being like, no, wait, I know this isn't true. The biggest thing
that I'm advocating for is that within all services, that they have to have the basic knowledge of autism. So that training, like, we want training for all with suicide, but definitely part of that has to be taken in autism. Like, I've spoke to so many doctors that they don't even really cover mental health.
Yeah, I know.
You know, like, it's maybe 10 or 15 minutes within.
So tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
and there's so much pressure on these services, and I completely understand that. Like, I'm from a family of doctors, but, like, there's then that feeling of, like, you know, drowning for them in situations, because they're like, I'm not sure, like, I don't know certain situations, or, you know, what I do to best support in this moment. And just those really small, wee, simple things can make a massive difference for families as well. Like, families coming into that situation, knowing that that individual has an awareness, has an understanding as well. I guess if I'm listening to this as a parent or carer, what would you share to encourage others on their journey as a parent?
I think it's education for them as well. Like, I'm a big person for education and knowledge. I have had to, as a mum, understand that I didn't know everything. So my journey was that I have to forgive myself, that as a mum I didn't know everything. And it's really, as parents, you know, it's okay to ask, it's okay to search, it's okay to go and find those services. You know, and, you know, I've said that, you know, the internet is an amazing thing. Teachers, I must say, the young teachers are coming up. I'm finding that they're very grounded in what autism is. And it's just asking someone, do you understand this? You know, can you help me, and where could I go?
Absolutely. I always say there's such strength in actually turning around and saying, I actually know nothing about this. Like, I nearly love when I'm doing a training and staff or whoever will be really honest with me and be like, you know what? I actually know little to nothing about this, but I'm willing to learn. I think that's so powerful, rather than turning around and being like, here, listen, I do know everything. You know, like,
and it's okay, none
of us would ever claim
to know everything.
100%, because I think it's so challenging for parents and carers in terms of, you know, the immediate support isn't given. So maybe you're querying this about your child or young person and you don't know where to turn, and the internet is full of good, but it's full of confusing stuff too, you know. So having someone to sit and sieve it out with you is really, really important, and be like, well, this is actually what you need to focus on or here. And, you know, it's a whole capacity thing as well. But I think that's a really good piece of advice of, I guess, keep learning, you know, like, you know, the more you know, the more you can help, and being able to support your young person within that, and being, I guess, finding probably a few really key voices that you like to learn from, and being able to keep coming back to them and being able to learn kind of from is really, really important as well. If I'm like, Julia, huge part of your story, I mean, like the main kind of heartbeat of your life is advocating for the autistic community. You know, you're up there chatting and making sure voices are heard and people aren't forgotten about, you know, in policies and legislation that, you know, even before things are passed, I know you're like, excuse me, what about the autistic individuals? Like, and I think even curious, because we were having this conversation beforehand of how much even that has changed, and that's encouraging that now they, you know, autistic individuals are being mentioned, whereas like 3-4 years ago wouldn't have even been considered in these policies. That's important. What you're doing is massively important in advocating. How can I, if I'm listening to this and I'm like, right, I didn't realize that was such a big thing. How can I advocate for autistic individuals better? If I'm parent care, if I'm a teacher, what can I do?
I feel that even in the smallest things, sitting talking to a friend or a family member, that's advocating. You know, like telling them that this is how my child is and this is what it, you know, and where to go and get that help. Initially, it's within your school, you know, speaking to your school teacher, PTA, you know, simple things. That would be the first people that you would, you know, talk
no, you're
to.
right. No, this is really good. What I'm thinking when you're saying that is sometimes I think when people think advocating, they think at the level, I mean, on what you're doing, we need you to do it.
Which
like,
is
keep
fantastic.
doing it. It is fantastic. We absolutely need people in there knocking on the doors and being like, oh my goodness, would you open your eyes and see what's going on? Which is what you've done over the last few years. And I know even in government, there are now people who would be like, we need to talk to Julia, because they just now are aware out of their bubble that this is a conversation that needs to be had. We need that. But not everyone, I guess, needs to be doing that. So in a way, yes, that's really helpful. But as you just said, I can advocate in my PTA.
Yes.
I can advocate because I'm a parent and I'm making sure that at our school family fun day, we also have things in place to consider what is this environment like for a neurodivergent individual. You know, that's advocating.
For me, churches as well. You know, early morning, we know that the kids climb over the benches or under the seats, and it's okay to let other members of the church to know this is okay. This is what my child does, and that's advocating as well.
And advocating then, I guess, in that if you're whatever environment you're in, absolutely, if you're in your youth setting or if you're in a church setting or if you're at school, advocating just looks like using your voice to kind of share that information in a positive way. And I guess even it's simple things like turning around then, and you don't have to, I think if you're listening to this and you're not a parent or carer, you also actually nearly need to be advocating even more so because your capacity might be a little bit more. So if you don't have a neurodivergent individual, we need you to advocate too.
100%.
Because we need you to understand. So if I'm sitting in front of you, or if I'm in Tesco's or a supermarket and your child is having a meltdown and really sensory overwhelmed, I can advocate to in that moment by being kind. And if I hear someone else say something, be like, remember, you don't know everyone's journeys. Like that's advocating in those moments. Or if I'm out with my friends and someone makes a comment and they're like, oh sure, we're all a bit autistic, me advocating in that moment is being like, hey, that's really factually incorrect and actually really offensive to the autistic community. Those are advocating, isn't it? Those are moments.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, you know, if you're doing it every day, there is a chance that you could come across someone to advocate for, and I think that's most important, because then it makes that the stigma around being autistic, you know, you're opening that up, that we can speak about it, that it is okay to be autistic.
Oh my gosh, and just even opening it up, like I would love that people would want to be the kind of teacher or whoever that, you know, that they feel a parent or carer feels really safe. Saying, I'm just wondering if my kid is autistic, you know, and them knowing that the parents or the teacher's going to be like, yeah, cool, like, let's journey that. Why do you think that, you know, and work with, rather than being like, oh no, you know, like those responses are advocating, aren't you? How you upskill yourself to just have knowledge and understanding. And I think even within that, also being like, knowing when to be like, listen, I'm sorry, I dealt with that wrong. Or like, that's advocating of admitting that maybe the support's not been there. How can we do it? Things like schools. How are your open nights? Things like that. You know, like, are you putting a thing out there that you're saying, listen, for neurodivergent individuals and families, we are aware that open nights could be really overwhelming. Here's an alternative dates that we're also setting up, so it's not you're going in and there's like 400 people at that one night, you know, like those small things are advocating, as well as, you know, banging in the door and storming and saying, here, would you flip it, listen, you know.
Which not everybody's able to do that, and I know that, you know.
But that's why we have you, we need that for you.
You know.
Absolutely, and we need
change.
But isn't it then like advocating all those different levels?
Yes.
That's how change then comes, when we're all doing it together at whatever level and whatever part of life we're in. Listen, Julia, hope is something you talk about a lot, you know, in your journey, which I think is incredible, and it's beautiful to have that in your journey. I know you've journeyed and navigate this traumatic and life-changing grief, and you still yet remain hopeful. How would you encourage others to remain hopeful?
I think hopeful is just such a powerful word. Do you know what I mean? And everybody, you know, we always say, oh, I hope this happens, or I hope that happens, or, you know, and to be hopeful for something. I've had to learn that not everything comes in the way that you want it to come. So it's wanting something to be changed and to, you know, strive for that, and to know that it's not going to happen straight away. You're still living in hope for that.
Okay. I really understand that. I think that's a really good point in terms of change doesn't happen, unfortunately, overnight. You know, things like policies and all of that take a long time to filter through, but remaining hopeful that it will happen.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it, Julia. I like that, you know. And if no, if you're told no, I always remember this phrase, if you're told no, you're talking to the wrong person. So keep asking.
Yes. Don't be afraid to go and see someone else or say, right, I didn't get what I needed there. Right. Okay. Who can give me what I need? You know, that's one of the biggest things I've been doing, is to try and find out, okay, they can't help me because they don't understand it. Well, who can I get to come and support me to bring that on? So it's constantly living for change and hope.
Yeah. And hope that it will come.
I have no real wise words for that.
I think that is wise, Julia. I really do. I think it's really easy to become very defeated in a lot of these things. If there's no change, nothing will ever change. But if we sit in that, nothing will ever change.
The small moments, those wee tiny things that are changing. People are talking about autism. That's a hopeful.
Right. I felt really emotional actually, because I was recently at an open night with a school, and I was really, really encouraged by the small things they were doing. Listen, there's lots of things I'm sure that could be doing, and everyone has different experiences with schools, but this particular secondary school had set in their school, they've got classrooms for young people with any form of additional needs. They're inverted commas mainstream school, but they've set up their system in a way that there's a beautiful transition. So they have, for the first 3 years when you go in, you're in smaller classrooms, you have one main teacher with classroom assistants, and you then go out to core subjects and come back. And I was just thinking, I wouldn't have seen this 5 years ago in this school, I bet you. That's it's a big change, but it's a small thing that even with the family I was there supporting, I could see their mentality be like, oh, they're trying something here. So it's the small things that we have to hold on to, that you're like, listen, do I want every single school in Northern Ireland to be doing that? And actually, could there be things that we could do a wee bit better within that? Yeah, 100% there could be. But I felt really hopeful leaving that, because I was like, see, there's a change. Like, it's not perfect.
No.
It's not where I wanted to be, but it's starting to get there.
We went to parents and teachers for my other son. He's going to secondary school, which was Luke's school.
Right. Oh, wow.
And it was going in and actually seeing that they have a sensory room. They had a therapy dog.
Oh,
so
I love
that was a lot of hopeful stuff that I thought, do you want to know if Luke had this?
Happened.
So
wow.
There's hope there that children are going to be helped through school and be able to stay in mainstream school.
Yeah, and get that support. We finish off our podcast with a bit of a game called Quick Equip, which we kind of rapid fire tools for teachers or parents. So one tool or resource that you love. Julia?
I've said before probably many times, the internet.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Resources.
Yeah.
Eden did not pay me to say this, but it would definitely be an Eden consultancy.
Hey. I'll give you the $5 after.
Thank you. I think the biggest thing for me to be able to say, for me, why I love you is because when we first met, you know, I didn't understand how important it would be to have things as to be able to see. So you had like sensory things on the table. That was all new to me as well. So those resources, your knowledge for autism is absolutely amazing. And I think that has given me hope that actually the basic foundation for people to understand autism, you're doing that.
Oh, thanks.
You know, and anything that I have, you know, read or seen or watched, there's nothing that I could turn around and say, no, I don't agree with that. You know, really it's amazing how you do it and how you tell people that, or the like of the podcast today. You know, that's so important. That's the biggest advocacy that anybody can do to make sure that autistic people are heard. Sorry, to be emotional.
I appreciate it.
I would have loved that for Luke.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I wouldn't be where I was for that knowledge to have had, because I've learnt so much from you to be able to tell other parents. And if I'm anywhere within, you know, in Stormont or anything, I do talk about you all the time. I'll say you've got to go and see Rebecca or listen to Eden. And that's because of the resources that you have. And I think it's so important that if anybody's listening to this today, to get on and listen to what you have to say, because I think that's changing. It's changing lives, because it's giving people confidence to know that they can look after their children.
Thank you. That's really kind words and beautiful to hear. And yeah, overwhelming for me to hear too. But like, yeah, and I, you know, that's what we hope for. I said to people recently, you know, that is why we are churning out stuff, you know, because the podcast, all of this stuff, it's not because we're like, hey, this is just, look at me, listen to me. I'm desperately trying to fight for families and young people and make sure they have and are equipped, you know, even equipped to be able to feel confident. And exactly like you say, I've been able to look and be like, okay, I know this and I can help. And I think it's beautiful that you've turned around and now what you know, you're passing on to other parents, like, you know, and well done for doing that, because, you know, a lot of people wouldn't. And I just think even within what you're doing, I really appreciate that. A mindset that helps you, Julia. Is there one?
Plenty of patience.
Oh, it's a hard
to know that things will get done, maybe not in the time that we would like it.
Right, that's a good one.
And plenty of compassion.
Ooh.
You know, compassion for parents that are, you know, they're struggling. The journey isn't easy, and we never know what's going on in anybody's home to how they deal with it. So it's compassion for
Patient
people.
And compassion. I think if we were like that to each other in a general day-to-day, it'd be a beautiful place, wouldn't it? And there's been lots of advice in this podcast, Julie, that I know people would take, but if you were to say sum it up in one thing, would you be able to? One piece of advice?
Listen.
Yeah. Yeah,
really just take your time to talk to someone. We don't know what they're going through. Yep. We don't know what they're dealing with. You know, it's okay not to be okay. You know, we say that all the time, and people aren't okay. Yeah. So it's just taking your time, have a cup of coffee and listening to what they're going through and how you can help.
And their families as well, I guess. That's what you're looking at as well, of like listening to. So if you are listening to this podcast and you're a professional in this setting, I'm maybe going to call just on you guys here a little bit. Listen to parents and carers when they tell you that things aren't okay at home. You know, listen if you're a teacher and someone is coming to you and a parent is saying, I'm really struggling, my young person's really struggling. Don't sweep it under the rug.
Parents are the experts.
Parents are the experts. We'll say it before, we'll say it 1,000 times. They're the experts in their young people. We've got to listen. And I think that's a really important thing. We've got to listen to what our young people are saying. We've got to listen and give them voices as well in these spaces. It's a great piece of advice. Julia, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on and just sharing so beautifully and vulnerably your story. I know it's one that is always very emotional for other people to hear, but I think the fact that you are, you know, really bravely stepping into advocacy and, you know, for Luke as well, and surviving in that and push forward, you're very open about how difficult that is. And, you know, I know if people hear you speak, I think it's really important how vulnerable you are and that you're not afraid to be like, this is horrific, but this is what I now want to provide for other families. So keep fighting. We'll fight with you. And thank you for coming on. And I hope today, I know people will have got stuff from this podcast and just feeling a little bit more seen in their journeys too. So thanks very much.
Thank you.